You're listening to audio from the Decidedly podcast. For more information, find us on Instagram at Decidedly Podcast.
So I want to talk to you about a hike that we went on. Was it 2019? I think it was 2019. I think it was somewhere around May. We decided we were going to climb Mount Princeton outside Buena Vista, Colorado. And we had been warned that we should not do that because that wasn't the right time of year.
It was May and the mountain was covered in snow.
The mountain was completely covered with snow. And
you could ski on it.
Yeah, we did not heed that advice.
Yeah, we were told
by more than everyone. One person.
So we were in Colorado Springs and we were going to go to the outfitters there and say, hey, what do we need? Like, do we need ice axes? Do we need snowshoes?
We bought snowshoes, yeah.
Well, they said no. They were like, no, you don't need that. But they also didn't really have any insight because nobody climbed it during that time.
They had no intel, right?
Yeah, so we said, do we need snowshoes? They're like, no, not to just hike that mountain. And we go, well, we're going to do it like, tomorrow. Yeah, maybe don't do that.
Right. They did. Yeah, they were not encouraging. No. They did sell us the snowshoes though. Yeah.
They did. I think for $50. I still have those in my garage.
Oh, I've still got
Yeah, I've never used them since.
Probably good. It's probably good.
Remember how we found that ice axe?
Well, that's what I was going to tell you is talked about. So I had an ice axe. We had the snowshoes. We had micro spikes. We had everything we needed. We're going up there, and we could tell it was getting worse, right? I mean, we were hitting this, going up the road.
What do you mean it was getting worse?
Well, there was more and more snow as we ascended, as normally happens, right? As happens. And, obviously we can look up, it's just solid white. And you're ahead of me, and I just see this glimmer of silver kind of poking out from under the snow. And I go over there, and I pull out this brand new Black Diamond ice axe. And I already had one, so I handed that to you. And you're like, okay, I think you just kind of stuck it in your pack or whatever. And we go up a while, and we get along this ridge, and we're not hiking on the trail anymore because you can't see the trail. We decide we're just going to go over this ridge and then up this ridge.
We were off the trail within like a half mile.
Off the trail right out of the gate because there was no trail to be seen. And so we're at this ridge, and for some reason I'm taking off my gloves and going to just kind of readjust everything. And so I take off my gloves and drop one, which immediately just zips down the mountain.
Oh, I forgot about that.
About probably 75 yards. I mean,
it was longer than
just
that.
Just flew down the mountain.
It was pretty far.
Sliding down this mountain. I'm like, damn, so I need it because we had yet to really begin the hard part of the hike. And so I'm like, oh man, so I'm going to have to scoot down and get this glove that had just kind of rested on some.
Well, it slid so far because it was all the snow that was on the mountain had been there all winter long.
No, yeah, it was undisturbed.
And it was all compact. It was like ice. It wasn't much snow. It's not like when you go skiing and you step off the ski path and it's just you're hip deep in snow, right, in powder, because it wasn't powder. It had been there and just kind of sunk
frozen
down.
And refrozen, yeah.
So your glove just slid right on top, just straight down, and got caught by a tree.
Yeah, it kind of got stuck in a little sapling or whatever it was. And so I tell you, I'm going to slide down. I'm going to use my ice axe, and I'm going to slide down on my butt and kind of control my descent with my ice axe. And you were like, oh, this ought to be good. So you take out your phone, and you're gonna film me sliding down and arresting my speed with this ice axe. And so I sit down and immediately start following this glove. I mean, I start zipping down the mountain just as fast as this glove went down the mountain. And I hear you behind me going, hey, wait a minute, wait, stop. What? I've got to film you. I'm like, I'm not trying. could not control this descent. And I go zipping down the mountain. I'm like, oh, crap, this is for real. And I'm trying to turn around and do everything I had remembered from training on how to self-arrest. Turn over on your stomach, lift your ankles up, dig the ice axe in. And before I could do that, I hit this tree that slows me down and kind of spins me. And I keep going. And I finally am able to stop myself near where the glove was and then have to hike back up this 45-degree angled solid snow and just wore myself out. And I think you were laughing at me. But the scary part about that summit on Princeton in the solid snow is nobody was there.
Yeah, so where you fell, there was, if you had not been caught by the tree or not had an ice axe, you would have slid 2,000 feet.
Oh, I would have kept going. Yeah,
you would have gone all the way down the mountain.
It would have been. It was pretty bad. And I remember us going. We go up the face of Princeton, and just kind of making our own tracks up the side, and it was pretty steep. I mean, we weren't following the normal sort of traversing back and forth that a trail would take you. We were just going straight up. And we drop our packs at the ridge and to lighten up and go to the summit. And while we're up there, it just starts a snowstorm. Like the very reason why somebody tells us not to go do this in May. It becomes the afternoon.
So we were fully exposed.
Fully exposed.
Thousands of feet above the tree lines. There's
solid snow in the afternoon. A storm, of course, comes
on the ridge, so there's no cover either side.
So we're coming back down, and all of a sudden it hit me. All the snow has now covered our tracks, that we took coming up the mountain, which wouldn't be a big deal because we can go back down. But it also covered up the tracks that let us know where we drop our pack and covered up our packs.
Yes.
And so we're going back and forth in a snowstorm looking for our packs, not knowing if we've already passed them or if they're ahead of us. We have no clue where these things are. Finally find them and come back. And I remember this found ice axe that we just happened to stumble on saved you 2 or 3 times.
Several times, yeah.
I mean, I just shudder to think, if you didn't have that, had we not found that.
Well, it was pretty stupid of us to probably be there at all.
It was, I think in terms of decisions, that was a bad one.
Probably not, but certainly not prioritizing safety.
No. No.
The pictures look really cool.
The pictures are good. It was fun. It was a good experience, I guess. Yeah. In hindsight, it was that kind of what's type 2 fun. Type 1 fun is fun that you have while you're having it and you remember it and it was fun. Type 2 fun is not fun while you're doing it.
Really fun to talk about.
Fun to reflect upon. Mm-hmm. And that was that for sure. That was that for sure.
Speaking of our own mountain climbing adventures, today we're talking to Shailee Basnet. Shailee is the leader of the 7 Summits Women Team, a group of 10 Nepali women that became the first female team to scale the highest mountain in each continent, starting with Mt Everest. Now she leads programs to train young survivors of sex trafficking to become trekking guides themselves. I hope you learned something about decision-making from our conversation with Shailee. I know I certainly did. I'm Sanger Smith with Sean Smith. This is Decidedly. That's the coolest interpretation of that painting or that art piece that I've seen or heard, rather.
So tell me again your interpretation of the painting. So we just walked past it. Mm-hmm. So you were talking about how when you went through the Khumbu Ice Falls, that sculpture piece of art reminded you of that.
Yeah, their Khumbu Ice Fall is known for the aluminum ladder crossing, both horizontal and there are a few vertical. And there is one particular super vertical, 90 degrees, and just like this big ice cliff. And there's this, I don't know, at least 5, maybe 6, 7 aluminum ladders joined together. And you're on your crampons, so always the trick is to balance on each rung with those spikes on your crampon. And you're going up, tuck, 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 and then you have to, again, come back down. So that vertical ladder.
It's interesting how I think all art, when we interpret it, we we can only really draw on the experience of our own life, right? So I was sitting in front of that piece that is, it's a black ladder with a gold box on top, right? That doesn't scream anything specific, right, as far as how you should interpret it. But in our office, I asked people, because obviously I have a lot of emotional attachment to that art piece since my grandfather made it. And everybody had something along the lines of finances. They're like, oh, yeah, I think it's about reaching your financial goal.
Yeah, that's the first interpretation I've heard that related it to the Kumba Ice Falls. Yeah.
I think that's what he had in mind, too. I'll have to ask him.
Yeah, so that was done by Joe Guy, who there's a piece of his in at DFW Airport in the American Airlines lounge that he did. That's half as big as that wall over there. So it's nice to see it.
Yeah, you should check that out when you fly out tonight.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you can see it.
Yes.
So my Everest story for you, my daughter and I went.
One up her.
I'm gonna want. Yeah, this is so much better than whatever story you had. So my Everest story was I had always thought in the back of my head. I read see documentaries on Everest. I read the books. I've read Into Thin Air with John Krakauer, and I've always had this. It seems to have a magnetism that pulls people to it, and so a lot of other people, I've seen a lot of that stuff and studied about it. And so my daughter and I went to Tibet several years ago, and decided we were going to go to Everest Base Camp, and did some hike up to Everest Base Camp, because I had always had this illusion that with enough time, enough training, enough money, I could do that. I could climb Everest. And so we get up there, and we were camping out at the base camp, and we decide we're going to take a small, hike up, and we're already at 17.2 or something like that, 17,200 feet. And we hike up with really just this small little rise, this small little hill, and it just winded me. And I sat down, and I said, I'm just going to take a break here. And I'm like, I don't know what I was thinking. There's no chance I'm going beyond this point. This is it for me.
Feels familiar.
Yeah. Do you hear stories like that? A lot of times people are just kind of so impressed with, what you've done.
I think, at the base camp of Everest, there's 50% oxygen compared to sea level. So even for me sitting here to think, like, if somebody, if this room was kind of sucked like 50% of oxygen out of this room, how would we feel? So climbing mountains are like that for every single person. There are very few people in the world who are natural at high altitude.
Which is no big deal, yeah.
Yeah. So that's my story. That's my friend's story. That's like veteran climber stories. That's a newbie story. Yeah.
So being from Nepal, I would think that there is a lot of. Are there a lot of people who go into hiking as a career in terms of guiding and those types of things? I would imagine it's huge in Kathmandu and where you're from.
Maybe the short answer is not really.
Okay.
The population of our country is kind of 30 million plus, and adventure tourism is such a small, niche thing that people working in that sector is very small. Like Sherpa, popularly,
right.
known as Sherpas, they're famous for being high altitude mountain guides and all. Sherpa, the word means an ethnic community, but if you work in the mountains as a high altitude guide over the years, you're also called a Sherpa. So it's like when you look at the scale of the population of the entire country, it's a small, very, very small number. So for a lot of people who are not from the Himalayan region, there are other terrains in the country, so like mid-hills, like Kathmandu, and then down south it's flat plains sharing open border with India.
Right, okay.
We could be very distant from mountains or mountaineering.
I remember as we were traveling through Tibet, just the desolate terrain, and so I always have this image that if I were going to that area, I'd just be hiking all the time, and it's all mountains, and you're right. There's a lot that's just plains and flat. And how did you get into that then? If that's not if it's a small subgroup that you describe, how did you get into deciding you're going to go from that to climbing